Today's review is sponsored by the new Baseball Bat Toolkit. If you can't fix your toaster, you can at least smash it. It feels good to get out your frustrations.
Watch it, Alan. I'm shooting.
Hello, my fellow fans of horror and sleaze. I'm doing something a little different today. We're going to be looking at two movies from the underrated genre of horror westerns, Ravenous and Bone Tomahawk.
That'll do it. Oh, gracious. We need to get...
I was going to do a separate review for each of these movies, but they go so well together. They are fantastic movies on their own, but together they make for a perfect double feature. So that's how I'm gonna tackle these two flicks. This is my first double feature episode. If you all like this, then I'll do some more in the future. But for now, let's just jump into it. I'm a Western fan. I'm also a big fan of cannibal movies, and I have to ask, what's more American than Cowboys and Cannibalism? Ravenous and Bone Tomahawk mix these two genres together, which is why they make for such a great double feature. First up is Ravenous, an incredibly underrated movie from 1999. In the movie, we follow Captain John Boyd, played by Guy Pearce. He has just been promoted for cowardice. Let me explain. Ravenous takes place during the Mexican-American War. During a battle, Boyd became frozen with fear, allowing his entire outfit to die. The only reason he lived is because he played dead, resulting in him being buried under the bodies of his dead comrades. The bodies are then wheeled into the Mexican fort, and then mysteriously, Boyd regains his courage and single-handedly takes the enemy fort.
We're gonna promote you, Boyd. We could shoot you. But as you single-handedly captured the enemy command, it might set a bad precedent.
Now, his commanding officers wanted to court-martial him because of his cowardice, but that wouldn't look good, seeing as he was technically the hero that took the enemy fort, so they gave him a half-hearted promotion and forced him to become the third in command at Fort Spencer, which is a fort in the middle of nowhere. It's basically a dumping ground for outcast soldiers. One night, this strange man who's nearly dead wanders into the fort. He tells this horrifying story about how he and his traveling party got lost in the mountains for 3 months with no food. And, you guessed it, they grow this nice little vegetable garden with lettuce, potatoes, peas, beets, and various other greens, and then they have this nice little vegetarian dinner party. Okay, fine, they engage in cannibalism.
I ate sparingly. Others did not. The meat did not last us a week, and we were soon hungry again, only this time our hunger was different.
The members of Fort Spencer send out a rescue party, with the mysterious stranger leading them to the location. But not all is as it seems. It turns out that the stranger has inherited mild supernatural abilities from his cannibalism. Things get bloody and delicious. Moving on to Bone Tomahawk, this one starring legendary badass Kurt Russell. The film opens with two Western bandits who have just murdered and robbed a group of unsuspecting travelers. The two are played by Sid Haig and David Arquette, which is another connection to Ravenous since he appeared in that movie too.
Worthless. Don't throw no Bibles in there. I know it's bad luck. Besides, you can always sell them to some idiot.
After their robbery shenanigans, the two accidentally wander into this strange, ancient burial ground. There they encounter a group of savage troglodytes. Not Native Americans. The movie is very specific about that.
You're afraid of your own kind?
They're not my kind. They're a spoiled bloodline of inbred animals who rape and eat their own mothers.
Well, what are they?
Troglodytes.
Cut to the ironically named town of Bright Hope, because let's face it, this movie is not going to be very bright. We're introduced to our main characters in this small town. First there's Sheriff Hunt, played by Kurt Russell, and his backup deputy, played by Richard Jenkins.
This tastes like corn.
It's corn chowder.
Oh. Then things are lining up.
There's Arthur and his wife Samantha, and then there's the gunslinger Bruder.
John!
Yes?
Make any flirtatious remarks in my wife's presence, there'll be a reckoning.
I'll behave, cowboy.
Things take a turn when Bandit Arquette wanders into town, followed by the Savages. People get kidnapped, including Samantha, the head deputy, and Bandit Arquette. So it's up to the sheriff, the backup deputy, Bruder, and Arthur to travel across the desert and try to save these people from these savages. Oh, and did I mention these troglodytes are cannibals? You probably should have guessed that. These two flicks have plenty of similarities, but there are a lot of differences that help set them apart. Ravenous takes a subtle supernatural angle with its cannibalism.
Come on, move!
While Bone Tomahawk is a more traditional cannibal flick. Well, not traditional, I shouldn't say that, but you can tell it was inspired by the Italian cannibal flicks. Even though Bone Tomahawk was inspired by these movies, it has its own atmosphere and its own feel to it. It's able to stand on its own. It was like someone took an Italian cannibal movie and put it in this new Western setting. I like when filmmakers are inspired by old movies, but are able to do their own thing. I think Ravenous is the first movie you should watch in this double feature. There's a dark sense of humor throughout the film. It never overshadows the atmosphere, though. It's a light sprinkle.
What's the matter?
Wake up. Wake up.
What?
He was flicking me!
Right!
The villain is Colonel Ives, who poses as the helpless stranger earlier. In the movie, cannibalism has supernatural properties. Eating human meat can heal, cure disease, give the consumer unnatural strength, and unnatural long life. As long as they keep eating people.
You know, not that long ago, I couldn't do that. Could barely take a breath without coughing up a pint of blood. Tuberculosis.
Bone Tomahawk explores more traditional cannibalism. This one's a slow burn, and I've heard many people say that slow burn means boring. Not when it's done well. The best slow burn horror movies focus on a different genre, with horror happening around the edges of the story. As the story goes on, the horror starts to slowly invade the movie, and once we get to the third act, horror completely takes over.
What are you hearing?
It stopped. Just wait a second, you...
Bone Tomahawk follows a typical Western story until the third act, where the rescue party encounters the cannibals. It gets very gnarly in the third act, with one of the most brutal kills in modern horror. But I'm not going to show that here because spoilers and YouTube. Each movie has great cannibals. Ravenous has Colonel Ives, who is such a fun, sadistic villain. When he shows his true colors, he has fun while killing the rescue party. It's my favorite scene in the movie because Ives enjoys hunting as much as getting his kill.
Run!
The third act gets even more suspenseful when our cannibal retakes his Colonel Ives persona and becomes the new commanding officer of Fort Spencer. Our main character, Captain Boyd, is the only one who knows this guy's a cannibal, and everyone else just thinks he's nuts.
Captain, this is Colonel Ives. Colonel, Captain Boyd.
Captain. How's the leg?
What makes matters worse is that Ives is trying to coax Boyd into his cannibalistic lifestyle. We learn that when Boyd was buried under all those dead bodies, some of the blood dripped into his mouth, and that's what gave him the courage and the strength to take the enemy fort at the beginning of the film.
Strength slipping from your grasp. The growing, killing need to replenish. But I don't have to remind you of that. You're feeling it right now.
So you got crazy cannibal man posing as a colonel, trying to get Boyd to become his crazy cannibal friend. Colonel Ives is one of the most underrated horror movie villains in one of the most underrated horror movies.
Here I am, 1 year later, feeling more alive than ever before. And that's what surprises me about you, Boyd. You've tasted it.
Bone Tomahawk takes a while to get to the horror elements. For the majority of the movie, it's a straightforward western. But it's a good western. In most movies, you have one or two characters that steal the whole show. That's not the case with Bone Tomahawk because all the characters are well done. First, you have Sheriff Hunt, which is played by Kurt Russell. He's just such a likable guy. But in addition to that, this character is so determined to save these people from these cannibals and keep his comrades safe.
We need to take care of these animals and ourselves.
I ain't thinking about myself right now.
I know you're not, which is why I'm putting this to you direct. If our horses die before we get there, or we go into hostile territory weak and foggy with exhaustion, we won't rescue anybody.
Then there's Chicory, the backup deputy. He's a simple man, but he's just so damn loyal and so damn charming with his simple ways that you can't help but love the guy.
Well, what I'm asking is, can you sit in a bathtub full of hot water and read a book?
I never tried.
Well, I heard about people doing it all the time, and every time I try it, I ruin the book.
We care about Arthur because, first of all, it was his wife who was kidnapped, and second, he's injured. We learn at the beginning of the film that he has a broken leg, but he's not letting that stop him. He's determined to save his wife, and we see him having to deal with this injury throughout the film. Things get pretty bad, and there are quite a few squirm-inducing moments involving that leg.
Oh, Jesus, goddamn!
And then there's Brooder. He's our morally ambiguous character, but we learn more about him as the film goes on, and what we learn makes him a much deeper character. As put off as we are by him at the start, we grow to understand him as the movie goes on.
Why do you hate him so much?
You should ask my mother and my sisters.
Never met him.
That's correct. Never did.
The fact that we like these characters is what makes the violence in the third act such a hard blow. Some of the violence is fast and hard-hitting. There are times when you say, holy shit, what's happening?
See any activity in there?
Then there's the big kill in the third act, which, Jesus Christ. I love the cannibals in this flick. The way they prepare the meat is so natural for them. They're cutting up these people like they're preparing family dinner. But the movie never lets you forget These are people being torn apart. These two movies are fantastic cannibal flicks. Ravenous is so underrated and deserves more attention, while Bone Tomahawk is a perfect mix of a western and a horror movie. And they both involve cannibalism, which is one of my favorite subjects in horror movies. Putting these two films together just makes sense. I don't really have a rating system for double features, mainly because if I'm recommending you watch these two movies together, you know that they're both good movies that I think are worth recommending. But just for the fun of it, I'd give Ravenous a 4.6 out of 5, and I'd give Bone Tomahawk a 4.8 out of 5. So if you add those together, carry the... hold on a second. It's a 9.4 out of 5. And on that note, I hope you all enjoyed this little double feature review. I want to thank everyone for continuing to watch and support this channel. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know, do you think we need more Cowboys vs. Cannibals movies? And let me know some of your favorite horror westerns. This is the Maniac, here to remind you that the grindhouse will never die. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go make a hand and cheese sandwich. You know, it's funny. I'm full of dad jokes, and I'm not even a dad.